Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto anime review. This one's going to be for episode 188, which is called Awakening. This episode is a pretty faithful adaptation of chapter 24, Kawaki, from manga volume 7. And yeah, for the most part it is very accurate. They added in a bit of a backstory for the dynamic between Garo and Kawaki. Because otherwise in the manga he just sort of comes in and it seems like there's something in the past between them, that they hate each other. Now we know sort of why that is. Perhaps maybe not why Garo is like always so angry and aggressive. But that seems to just be his personality. At least this gives a reason for why when he comes in here, he has a reason and wants to go after Kawaki. So that was actually nice to get. In terms of if they left anything out, perhaps just a few details from the scene where Jigen obviously buys Kawaki from his father. They didn't show him drinking. So they're, I suppose, leaving out the potentially like alcoholic aspect of it there. And then a line of dialogue from the manga that they didn't include in the scene was that you'd spring big books for such a puny brat. Are you a god or something? So that obviously has a lot of extra meaning, like if you read ahead in the manga. And I'm wondering, like, is that a little bit too on the nose, perhaps, to include that in here when the anime is sort of giving you a little bit of extra insight into things going on? So they just slightly shortened that scene. I still think they got the general core of that scene across, which is just that Kawaki clearly has bruises all over him, and his father clearly just beats him up. So Jigen buys him to be this vessel for Kara. But his life as part of Kara doesn't go any better. So, you know, we get this sense he's called Hollow by Garo. He's always referred to as the vessel. And one of the, I suppose, notable character lines from Kawaki is, you know, stop treating me like an object. So that's basically the sort of tragedy of Kawaki, like, basically presented to us in this episode, is that he's his own person, but everyone around him just treats him like an object. Like his father sold him to Jigen, and Kara has just used him as this vessel where a lot of the members are just sort of asking questions like, why is he even awake? Why isn't he asleep in the kind of vessel container and stuff like that? So it gives you that sense for like, okay, this is some of the dynamics, the themes that they're going to be going for with Kawaki, of this experimented on, you know, member of Kara, but only used to fulfill a very specific purpose. So, very interesting character, of course. This is not our first time seeing Kawaki. We saw him last episode, but also in episode 1. We know in the future, him and Boruto are going to be on opposite sides of something. So, his introduction here, his debut, I suppose, the characters meeting him for the first time, is a very notable scene, and I do think for just the Boruto franchise in general, this is a very key moment. The introduction of this character, it really adds a lot of depth to the series, a new element into things, especially with where we're going to be going over the next few episodes, and the dynamic that then creates for future arcs. So I think this episode did a good job. You know, it's more of a setup episode this time out, in that we end right as the action starts. So all we get is the first sort of initial attack, and we cut away with the idea that we're going to, I suppose, see the result of this next week. The only, I suppose, visual thing with Kawaki that I thought was very interesting this episode was how they showed the sort of coloration and the details surrounding Kawaki's powers with his arms and his body. Because in the manga, It never really came across to the point where like I could interpret what it was getting at in the way that they showed it here in the manga. Like you can see, there's the panel of him with his sort of arm, sword, blade thing. And there's no distinction of like color or anything like that. So it always felt as just like, ugh, is this some sort of weird like skin and bone type thing. Is it like a Kimimaro type ability? So it was a little unexpected to see that actually they show it as like his arm going black and like metal coming out of it, and it makes an actual blade. That obviously just visually was kind of difficult to get across in the manga, but it comes across quite nicely here, and it fits a little bit more into the idea of all of the Kara members have been, engineered to a degree, including Kawaki, as I suppose we're going to get into in the coming episodes. So that was a really cool visual to finally get a better sense for, like, okay, when Kawaki does stuff like that, it is actual sort of metal sort of coming out of his body. That was very nice to see. Beyond that, the main takeaways from this episode are mainly the further discussion of the karma mark. When Kawaki does wake up, about the only thing that really gets him interested in the Leaf Shinobi is Boruto showing off his karma mark and questioning. Like, he's really stunned by it. Like, Kawaki otherwise is his usual sort of rude, chatty self, but the one thing that breaks away from that is sort of like, how do you have that? As if like karma is a thing that only I should have. How on earth do you have it? What's going on here? Which is fascinating in so many ways to just kind of think of. Like, what way do you interpret that? Now, of course, at this point, you do also have to acknowledge have they really focused on it all that much? But Jigen, as you can see here, also has a karma mark. So, he's the leader of the organization. Is he the reason that Kawaki has his? You can begin to sort of connect a few dots here, even if you're not a manga reader who's kind of read ahead. So, that's all, pretty interesting how that works out. Just, he is shocked by the fact that Boruto has it, but he also uses that as like his reasoning for like, oh, you are members of Kara, you're here to take me in. You're not actually like shinobi just trying to do your job. So he's very suspicious, you can tell, not particularly comfortable within Kara, hence why they talk about him as if like, why is he even up? And he's being referred to by all of the other members as just this thing that they need to get back, and they don't want him to even be active, and so on. So that's all very interesting, and I suppose almost even more than that, just watching Kashin Koji like watch this event happen. He just lets it play out, lets Boruto and everyone else meet Kawaki. He doesn't choose to step in. And if not for Delta going to see Jigen and asking for permission to sort of investigate why Kashin Koji is taking so long, and bringing Garo in, we wouldn't actually have any of this sort of stuff really taking place. So Delta's suspicions are what brings Garo to this fight as like another outer to try and get Kawaki back. But she doesn't realize that, at least the way the story is presenting it right now, that the reasoning behind why Kashin Koji hasn't chosen to intervene as such is because the reveal that Boruto has a karma mark is a huge, massive reveal for the organization, as shown when we get Delta's reaction to seeing this for the first time. She is shocked by this, and they both sort of seem to take the approach of like, oh, how does like two karma marks together work? How does that interact? They're very interested to see kind of where things go from here. So that's all, really, really interesting to consider. Again, it's from an anime-only viewer perspective, I assume they're going through the same stuff that manga readers went through back at the time. I remember discussing it in my review of this chapter and so on. So that's very, very interesting. But they both seem to view Garo as a bit of a simpleton, but like, okay, I guess we'll try and get him back. They don't know exactly what happens when two karma marks meet, and we're going to see the result of that in the next episode. Because, one of the other things I suppose to talk about is just that the preview for the next episode basically showed us nothing. They kind of just showed us a still that they sort of panned over a little bit. And then the only animation as such in the shot was the Kawaki's karma mark sort of activating. just a little bit of a glow sort of coming over it, which is interesting because next episode 189 is the one that's animated like by the proper, Studio Pierrot team. So the expectation is that this is going to be one of those fancy, high quality animation episodes, and they're really going to go all out. So that's interesting. And I suppose putting a sort of special preview where they really didn't show any of it, and did a little bit of a more artistic type thing with it, of just next episode you are going to see the karma in action, basically, is a really good preview. By doing less, they're sort of giving you more hype, and that's a pretty good thing. I suppose the final scene to talk about is the Jigen and Delta scene. Now, for the most part, this is fairly fine. The main thing to talk about here is Jigen's power. So Delta gets frustrated with Jigen's attitude and kicks the whole table that he's eating on away, breaks it, so there's no table in front of them, they're still on their chairs. Jigen literally just puts his hand out and just like, boom, table appears. And it's not the same table, it's just a wholly new table just right there that just like appeared from absolutely nowhere. And like, we've never really seen an ability like quite like this before, but it speaks to like, oh, the first glimpse at Jigen's power is this sort of object manifestation ability or whatever. Again, you don't know any of the rules or specifics behind it at this point, but what a tease it is. That's like just a really cool ability that he uses so casually. Like, he literally, like, he doesn't do anything, he just puts his hand out and then the table just appears. Like, you sort of imagine then what this theoretically could be when you see him in battle. And it obviously, in the manga, we get to see it, and it's a really, really cool ability. So it's great to see that here, because obviously it's difficult to show something like that in the manga, of just basically going from a panel without a table to a panel with the table. Whereas in the animation, at least you really see the full flow of the scene, and the table really does just appear. So that was really good. So yeah, it is one of those episodes where it's just like they did everything like really, really well. It's perhaps just not the best episode, but it's the introduction of Kawaki, and that's a very important part of the series. And it's going to be exciting to get to the even more interesting stuff with him. So obviously we're going to get pretty heavy action in the next episode, but the stuff coming up, I suppose, as we maybe transition out of this arc and into the next one, that's where I think Boruto really, really takes off as a series, when we get into the character stuff with Boruto and Kawaki, and we begin to sort of set up this, we're at like what, the mid-50s in terms of Boruto chapters at the moment, or we're getting close to 60. So at the moment, the adaptation in the anime is getting close to sort of the halfway point of where Boruto is. This is like chapter 24. The stuff that pretty much happens like from like chapter like 30 to 60 really begins to like get stuff properly going within the series, and it just gets better and better as we go on. So Kawaki really is the point at which everything gets going. So they're my thoughts on this episode. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were, but that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.